Hello, amazing artists. Today we are going to make some paper inspired by Eric Carle. So at each table you're going to be doing something different. At this table you're going to have your box of found object supplies and cool colors. And as you can see, I have some cool colors on a tray here and a cool piece of paper. So I'm going to take a found object from the box and I'm going to dip it into the paint that I have here, and I'm just going to tap it on my paper. And the key here is that you want to use one color on the paper and you want to fill the entire thing. Now you can change objects as long as you stick with the same color, but I think it looks really nice and it's really useful when you're making collages to have the whole thing covered the same way so that you can use that in multiple places. All right, so that is the cool colors at the found object printing table. And you'll see that at the table with the warm colors, you have a bunch of boxes that are holding marbles, and we're going to put a paper in that box with the marbles with a little squirt of paint. Now, like at every center, I am the only person that can refill paint. Your teacher is the only person that can refill paint. So if you need paint, let your teacher know. You can see, put the paint, and now the student is just going to move the box around until the marbles eventually go through. Let's see if I can zoom out a little bit. I'm going to pick mine up, but you don't need to pick yours all the way up. All right, and so you're just going to go until your paper has streaks across it. And depending on how much paint gets put on this paper, there could be enough paint on the balls or marbles for another person, or it might all get used up. But you can see it creates kind of a fun streaky effect, okay? Now, if you are really taking your time to get the marbles through, whatever you end up with is going to be fine because it's going to cover the entire page, just because the marbles are going until they hit the edge, and it's going to eventually cover the entire page. It might be light, but that's okay. It's covering the entire page, and that's all right. Now, the neutral table is for paint scrapers, and just like at every table, you want to make sure that you are working on top of a protective paper so that the table doesn't get dirty. Now, what you're going to do at this table is you're going to use a paintbrush to very quickly put a layer of paint. Now, the thing with the paintbrush is you want the paint to go on quick. You want it to be thick enough that you can scrape it off. And you don't want to spend too much time here because your paper will get too wet and your paint will dry. So I just very quickly put it on, and now I'm going to grab a paint scraper and I'm just going to scrape it off. Now again, if your paint dries, you're not going to be able to scrape it off. If it's too thin, you're not going to be able to scrape it off. And notice that I covered pretty much the entire paper. All right, we don't want just a little splotch of paint in the middle. We want as much paint on that paper as you can possibly get. And like for every single one of these, when you're done, you're going to put everything back and you're going to take it to the drying rack so that it can dry. All right, now I'm at the last table, which is watercolor paint. All right, but not just watercolor paint. We're going to do a wax resist. All right, so you can do lines or shapes for this wax resist. That is up to you. They can all be the same lines. They can all be different colors or the same colors. Again, I think it's nice if you have something kind of consistent going all the way across, because then you can use that paper for, say, like all of your grass rather than hunting for it. But It's up to you. You can see I did the same zigzag. I just changed colors. That's fine. All right, now I am going to open up my paints and I'm gonna paint the entire thing the same color. All right, so remember when you're doing a resist, you wanna have lots of paint on your paintbrush and you want it to be nice and watery, but still have plenty of color. All right, and these paints might not be the best, but you know what? We're trying to use them up as much as we can before I replace them. So just use it up. And I'm gonna cover this whole thing in the same color so that I have a lot of the same thing and I'm filling the entire page. This is not the time for painting your house and your dog and your mom in a heart and a rainbow. This is just, we're trying to get nice painted paper for our collages because we're gonna cut these apart and we're gonna use them for something else, all right? So that's done. It's gonna go on the drying rack. Remember, you don't have to put your name on anything today because everybody's gonna share these. Just make sure that you are working on top of the protective paper while you're working. You are moving fast because paint dries. You are putting it on the drying rack when you are done. You're cleaning up your area and then you're moving on if you wanna move on.